Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I've decided to have yet another look at some video game history, and in the process answer the question, what exactly made EarthBound, aka Mother 2, great? First released in Japan in 1994, and later given a North American release in 1995, EarthBound, aka Mother 2, is a classic example of a game that has become far more popular and beloved the more time moves on. It was tragically underappreciated back when it originally came out, but is now considered not only one of the very best JRPGs released on the SNES, but also one of the very best JRPGs ever released, period. It's one of those games that people will list as games that you must play before you die, and for very good reason. So you may be wondering what all the fuss is with regards to EarthBound. What exactly made EarthBound great? Well, to start off, the first thing that I would suggest made EarthBound great was the sheer creativity on display. Now granted, some elements of EarthBound weren't exactly original. For example, both Gygus, the main antagonist of the game, as well as the world of Magicant, were both featured in the original Mother, aka EarthBound Beginnings. Though granted, you'd likely only really know this if you were from Japan at the time, as Mother, aka EarthBound Beginnings, didn't get an international release until 2015. Even then though, I cannot stress enough the sheer amount of creativity within EarthBound itself, even if you take into consideration EarthBound Beginnings. From the unusual scenarios that EarthBound throws you into, like dealing with a cult that worships the color blue, or some of the more unusual enemies like fighting abstract art that puts you to sleep as an attack, EarthBound is very much the kind of game where you simply don't know what to expect next, and in all the right ways. The sheer creativity and weirdness factor of this game also of course leads itself into some rather surreal humor, which again the game manages to absolutely nail. This also brings me quite cleanly to another thing that helped make the game great: the writing. This game easily has some of the best writing ever put onto an SNES cartridge, with the plot points having numerous and yet very effective twists to them, which I will not be spoiling in this video as I do want to leave those of you that are new to the game a chance to play it and enjoy it in the way that it was meant to be played and enjoyed. What I will say though is that I cannot stress enough just how important the writing was to making this game work, because yes, anyone could throw a bunch of random scenarios together with the intention of surprising players with something new, but it does take genuine talent to be able to pull it off effectively, especially if you're making a game with a surreal sense of humor. But even then, EarthBound isn't all 100% jokes, and also lends itself to some genuinely effective drama to boot. The end result is that this is a game that keeps you engaged as much as it keeps you guessing. Speaking of progressing further through the game, I do of course have to bring up another thing that helped make the game great: the combat, which of course itself was the glue that held everything together. And simply put, EarthBound did deviate a fair bit from standard JRPGs at the time. For a start, let's talk about the health system, which instead of instantly subtracting from your health pool, would slowly tick down to the amount of damage that you took, meaning that it was in fact possible to keep characters alive that would have otherwise perished from their injuries, assuming you heal them quickly enough. This may on its surface seem like a relatively small detail, but it does add a surprising amount to the game's depth. Another similar detail is the fact that if you're trying to grind in this game, which you most likely will be at least at some point because this is a JRPG, well, the game decided to make it much easier for you to do so, with battles getting auto-resolved if you end up being much more higher leveled than the enemies you are fighting, essentially turning the game into a Godzilla simulator where you gain free XP by just walking on stuff. And there are few things as cathartic as doing that to enemies that only only an hour or two ago were giving you some genuine trouble. Now granted, these aren't exactly the biggest departures from the JRPG combat formula, but they are certainly more than enough to help make the game stand out in that regard. So combining all of these features together, what you ultimately end up with is a game absolutely renowned for the sheer amount of creativity within it, utterly beloved for possessing some of the best writing ever put into a video game, and a legitimately unique and fun spin on the JRPG combat formula, as well as of course combining that with an equally surreal video game soundtrack that nevertheless manages to perfectly fit the game. With all of that in mind, this has been Ace, and I hope you'll agree when I say that EarthBound is great.